record. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Yesterday I discussed with you some of the concepts of Onoa regarding monetary matters. How much you're allowed to charge, what the limit of profit, when is the profit so excessive that the deal is to be canceled, and the question of Onoa on real estate, that there's no Onoa on karka. Well, tonight I want to discuss with you, just for the few minutes that we have, there's another area of Onoa that is called Onoa's Dvorim. It has to do with speech, that you fool somebody by what you say. Now this is related to another law in the Torah that Rashi points out to us, that lo samod al dam re'echa. You're not allowed to stand by and watch somebody else be injured. So that has many, many ramifications to it. The simple case is that if someone is drowning and you're a good swimmer, you should try and save them. But it also, as Rashi points out, lo samod al dam re'echa has to do with giving advice. So if someone comes to you for advice, for instance, on a certain matter, let's say he wants to buy this and this piece of property, and you are supposed to be an expert. And when he explains the piece of property to you and the price at which it can be obtained, the expert says, I'd like to buy it myself. And therefore he tells this man, this is really not for you. It's too big a risk for you. I don't know if it'll pay. He gives him bad advice. He gives him bad advice purposely. Goes out of his way for his own personal gain. He's giving the other person bad advice. So there's this law that you're not allowed to do that. Certainly, that's immoral. But here we're talking about a lesser type of case. Onoa's Dvorim is, I want you, let's say, I want you to invest money with me, which I don't. So I begin by developing a relationship with you. And I say, what a beautiful voice you have, how nice you daven, how nicely you dress. I give you all sorts of compliments that may or may not be true, but I have a purpose in mind. The purpose in mind is eventually I'm going to say to you, I have a deal and I think you should invest with me. So that everything that you said before is, so to speak, not true. It has an ulterior motive to it. And that's Onoa's Dvorim. So to falsely compliment people is Onoa's Dvorim. Now that doesn't mean that I have to walk up to you and say, that you have a terrible voice, or that I don't like the way you daven. That certainly is not what the Torah wanted you to do. But I don't have to say things that are patently not true in order to ingratiate myself with you. I'm cheating you with my words. I'm undermining you with what I want to happen then you're unaware of it. You're flattered by it. And that's a very difficult situation. And people are often unawares even of that fact. There, the other case of Ono Dvorim, which is famous, is false advertising. This is the best car in the world. That's Ono Dvorim. You can say this is an automobile that has these fine features to it, or is priced reasonably. Whatever you say about it is factual. But if you exaggerate it in order to entice the buyer to buy, so then that crosses the line. And that's a very difficult area, especially in our time when advertising is everything. There was a time that was not the case. But in our time, it's almost everything. And so you're not allowed to put distractions in order to attract people to your store. So that goes into the question of competitiveness. Now, how much does the Torah allow in the idea of competitiveness to take place? The Gemara brings us a case where a man in the store gives out free candy to the children in order to entice customers. Is that allowed? And these are questions that are rarely asked anymore because of the environment that we live in and because of the fact that all of this is, so to speak, accepted in our society. So if you believe the advertising, you're the fool. Because you know that what they're telling you is at best exaggeration and at worst untrue completely. And especially advertising that has nothing to do with the product. If you buy this automobile, then people will have a high opinion of you. Or beautiful women will pursue you, or whatever, all the tricks that are used today. So that has nothing to do with the automobile. All of that falls into Noah's word. You're seducing people with words, with promises that don't go to the reality of the matter, and therefore are limited in halacha what to do. Now, again, in our time, when the free market, so to speak, is the method that is used in the economy of countries, so then advertising is a necessary adjunct to it. I remember that when I was with the OU Kashrus long time ago. So there was one large food company in America that never advertised. Hershey Candies in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So Hershey was the largest manufacturer of chocolate in the United States. They had 80% of the market. They never advertised. For some strange reason, they wanted to have a kosher certificate. Somebody convinced them that they're Jews that are starving in an airport, they have nothing to eat, and they'll buy a Hershey bar if you have a half. So they applied to the OU. Remember, I went down there to Hershey, I never saw such a magnificent office in my life than the chief officer of Hershey. And we agreed how we'd do it. It was really a very easy action. There were no ingredients that were suspected. And he wanted to know what the fee would be. So I said, well, these are our expenses, etc. And then he says, you know, you won't believe me. He said, but I have nowhere to pay you from. I have no budget for it. I said, how come? He said, well, what do you get paid from Procter & Gamble? So I said, Procter & Gamble pays us from the advertising budget. We put the OU on the label. So that's advertising. They pay us out of their advertising budget. He said, well, we don't have an advertising budget. We don't advertise. People buy Hershey by word of mouth. They don't buy by advertising. So for a number of years, we couldn't figure out how to get paid. But we granted the certification anyway, because there was this lonely traveler in an airport somewhere in Texas that had nothing to eat, and we wanted him to have Hershey buy. Eventually, Hershey agreed to put the OU on the label. Once they agreed to put the OU on the label, they made an advertising department in order to pay the OU. But once they had an advertising department, it wasn't limited anymore just to the OU. And they went the way of all companies and they advertised. But originally, when the discussion with him, he says, we don't have to advertise. Advertising is phony, it's fake, we don't want it. We have such a reputation. The world has changed. So therefore, the question of Anoas Dvorim is really a present and vital one. Someone called me, asked me a question on that. You know, you watch something on the internet and in the middle there's a pop-up of an advertisement, right? It's very annoying, but that's the way they make money. That's the way they advertise. He said, is that Anoas Dvorim? If I interrupt what you were doing in order to promote my thing, is that Anoas Dvorim? So I told him I didn't see it in the Chuvas. I don't have any recollection of it. But that's an interesting question. We have to decide now, how far does this go? And how is it applicable in our society and in our world? So there are chuvas from the 1800s about how large the sign you can have outside your establishment and what the sign could say. So you can say what you're selling, but you can't say selling the best in the neighborhood, because that's Anoas Dvorim. And nevertheless, all of that has changed. And many of the poskim say that because society has changed so, and it has become so acceptable that this is the way business is conducted, that, so to speak, nobody feels that onoah anymore, and that you're, so to speak, mochalit in advance. When you see the ad, so you discount it in advance, you're mochalit. And if you're mochalit, so then there would not be the problem of Anoas Dvorim that would exist. But it's a topic that's worthy of study and discussion, and how we see how the halachas of the Torah have to always be adapted and applied correctly to changing societies. Chananya ben Akash Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'Zaka V'Fircha Tirbo Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenamar Adonai Chafetz Aman Tzidko Yadil Torah V'Yadir
גדל ויקדש יעמד ימרח יוסף יום מתמחותי וחי כל ויום כל וחי בכל בית ישראל ועגלה וישמע